What if I told you that training methods that revolutionize modern sports performance were developed behind the Iron Curtain?
Упражнения с напольной штангой.
Translating the secrets of Soviet sports training from Soviet German young athletes should be trained.
The way Todd is trained as an experiment, I look at it as...
Injured in college, he says Mark's program brought him back. Now,
while the West relied on brute strength, the Soviet Union developed an athletic system based on biomechanics, plyometrics, and nervous system training. But in the US, a few pioneers were paying attention. In the 1960s and the 1980s, the Soviets were way ahead. They had a really deep understanding of how the human body developed power, speed, and strength. Meanwhile, in the US, a handful of coaches like Dr. Yessis and Marv Marinovich were uncovering some of these Soviet secrets, revolutionizing football, MMA, and other Olympic sports.
Of the year, John Madden and his outstanding coaching staff, Ollie Spencer, Tom Doms, John Polanchek, Richie McCabe, Sid Hall, Dick Wood, Marv Marinovich, a job well done.
The protocols the Soviets were developing weren't just theories. They were producing some of the best athletes in the world, dominating boxing, shot put, track and field, everything. They were getting gold medals in just about every sport. The Soviet athletic machine was in full effect. Today, these methods are still misunderstood or ignored, but the truth is they work, and they can completely change the way we train for combat sports and athletic performance, and why it's still one of the most effective ways to train speed, power, and longevity. This is the untold story of Soviet sports science and how it shaped and revolutionized sports training forever. After World War II, the world was divided, East and West, democracy, communism. And they were viciously competitive to prove which system was superior. But once the Soviets lost the space race, they needed a new propaganda tool to prove that they were superior. So they chose athletics, superior bodies. Now the Soviets were very secretive. They didn't want anyone to know what they were doing, so they literally treated this like a classified military project. So in the United States, it's a capitalist structure, so money is what drives innovation. If people aren't interested, no money shows up, no innovation. In a communist nation, in the Soviet Union, it doesn't matter if people are interested. If they have an agenda, they want to get something done, they will dump unlimited resources into that machine. The Soviets were coming up with a very structured, systematic approach using physicists, mathematicians, engineers, unlimited bodies to come up with a very scientific approach towards athletic development. In the West, it was kind of a free-for-all. We really relied on our big population and wide genetic pool of athletes to see who was superior and who can come up on top. They were just weightlifting, bodybuilding, running, kind of just doing it themselves. No guidance, no scientific application. Soviet scientists like Dr. Yuri Forshahansky, Anatoly Bondarchuk, and Nikolai Bernstein weren't just training athletes, they were engineering them, breaking down human movement into the most efficient form. They created training systems that maximize power output, minimize wasted energy. This is why their athletes consistently dominated on the world stage. But this is where things get interesting. They weren't just using these for their weightlifters and their sprinters. They were also using these for their combat sport athletes. Their boxers, their wrestlers, their sambo fighters, all of them were doing plyometric drills, specialized training movements to make them unstoppable. While American fighters were still relying on road work and heavy back sessions, Soviet combat sport athletes were developing faster reflexes, better agility, and superior conditioning through advanced training methods. They weren't just getting stronger, they were getting more efficient. Most of the American coaches were kind of just ignoring these advancements, but a handful of coaches did see the potential. One of them was the first strength and conditioning coach for the NFL, Marv Marinovich. What he did next would change the way elite athletes train forever.
The Raiders were Western Division champions for the third straight year.
In the 1970s, the Oakland Raiders weren't just a powerhouse team. They were ahead of their time in how they thought about training. With a young, open-minded head coach in John Madden, they wanted to innovate, and they saw something in Marv Marinovich, a former player turned strength coach who radically had new ideas about athletic development. The Raiders didn't just bring Marv in to run workouts, they gave him full control, a micro-experiment of what the Soviet Union was doing on a national level. He was tasked with not only designing the team's training program, but also creating a system for evaluating and developing talent. This is where Marv made a shocking discovery. He started testing rookies, measuring everything from speed, power, agility, flexibility, and he started to see patterns. The strongest guys in the weight room, they had some of the worst performance numbers on the field. Lifting big didn't mean moving fast. Moving weights wasn't the same as moving efficiently, and this changed everything. This put Marv at odds with traditional strength coaches who really just believed in heavy lifts, heavy squats, and bench pressing. He was on to something bigger. Here's where things get interesting. While Marv was discovering some of these ideas in the NFL, the Soviets were refining these ideas for years. Their entire system was built on what Marv was figuring out: the nervous system, explosive power, and how to build true athleticism. By the 1960s and 70s, the Soviet Union was developing a global sports empire. They weren't just winning Olympic gold medals, they were engineering dominance. While US coaches just relied on brute strength and overall talent pools, the Soviet Union was developing a systematic approach to re-engineering athletes from the ground up. They were decades ahead of what the American coaches could understand. Dr. Yuri Verkhovensky developed training techniques to maximize explosive power, proving that speed and force production weren't about max strength, but how efficiently the body could absorb and release energy. Soviet scientists optimized every movement, studying force vectors, joint angles, and movement patterns to make athletes as efficient as possible. The Soviets understood that the brain controlled athletic performance just as much as the muscles did. Their training was designed to maximize reaction time, reflex speed, and coordination. These training methods built some of the greatest athletes in history. But even with all their knowledge, the Soviets hadn't figured out everything. There was still one crucial element they overlooked. One that wouldn't be discovered until decades later. While the Soviets were revolutionizing athletic performance, very few in the US had access to their research, but one man did, Dr. Michael Yessis. Unlike most American coaches, Yessis had a secret weapon. He was born in Russia. Born in the Soviet Union and fluent in Russian, Yessis had a unique advantage. He could read and translate Soviet sports science research that no one else in the US could access. During the Cold War, travel between the US and the Soviet Union was heavily restricted, but under rare academic exchange programs, certain researchers were allowed to visit if their work was seen as non-political. Because Yessis' focus was on sports science, not politics, the Soviet government allowed him to enter their training facilities, meet their top sports scientists, and allowed him to study their methods firsthand. What he found was unlike anything being done in the US. Soviet scientists weren't just making athletes stronger, they were reprogramming their bodies to be more efficient, faster, and more reactive. And while most American coaches ignored the science, one man was already catching on to these principles and studying them secondhand: Marv Marinovich. Back in the US, Dr. Yessis was translating Soviet research and implementing it into United States athletes. Most American coaches still didn't listen, but one coach did, Marv. Marv and Yessis had both discovered the same truth. weightlifting alone wasn't enough. True athleticism was about efficiency, elasticity, and movement quality. Two men, Marv Marinovich and Dr. Michael Yessis, were on a collision course. Both had uncovered the secrets of Soviet training, and together they would create a system that changed the way we train athletes forever. But here's what they didn't realize yet. The Soviet model, while revolutionary, still had a flaw. There was one piece of the puzzle even they hadn't solved, and it wouldn't be discovered until years later when Marv worked with Dr. Edith on foot strength and ball work training. With access to research with Dr. Yessis and Marv's first-hand experience, they started to refine a new way to train athletes. This system focused on explosive power, biomechanics, and nervous system efficiency without the use of overloading with heavy weightlifting. And to prove that it worked, Marv had the perfect test subject for this new program, his own son, Todd Marinovich. From birth, Todd was trained using Soviet-inspired methods without overloading his body with heavy weightlifting, much like the other U.S. coaches were subscribing to.
In Southern California, there's an exceptional high school quarterback who's been training with these techniques since he was 14.
Todd Marinovich has passed for 9,194 yards in his football career, more than any other high school player in history. He owes a lot of his skill to his trainer, Dr. Michael Yessis. Yessis has spent the last 28 years translating the secrets of Soviet sports training from Soviet journals.
The Soviets are more successful in their training because of the use of science. They are very scientific in their approach to training. They don't just do it helter-skelter, more or less the way we do, or do it the way they were trained 20 years ago. They're training to perform like no one else has ever performed before. This is what you must do if you want to break a record.
Using Soviet training techniques, special training equipment, some of which he's designed himself, and of course plyometrics, he has trained Todd to be the best quarterback. Do these Soviet techniques figure in America's future? Well, Todd's father, who's been his devoted coach, feels that this is the way all our young athletes should be trained.
I don't look at the way Todd is trained as an experiment. I look at it as a way that all athletes should train, a systematic effort to produce the best results.
First, you must lay a very strong strength base and then do the plyometrics. And if you follow this progression, then you'll find yourself jumping higher, making quicker moves, running faster, and just being an overall better athlete.
The system seemed to be working. After countless training camps, Todd had perfect biomechanics and was drafted into the NFL, but he later admitted that there was a piece that wasn't quite adding up, where his athleticism didn't feel like it was where it should be.
All the things that we did weren't necessarily improving my athleticism. What was it doing? It was giving me some serious foundation in discipline and spending the time. And that alone can give you an advantage. And so as he progressed through his scientific approach, he didn't come across his groundbreaking stuff until late in his career with Troy Polamalu, who proved, God dang, and Sammy, proved that, man, he is onto something. I never got to play under the influence of Marv's training, really. The good stuff, I like to say.
Marv, Yessis, and even the Soviet system had overlooked something critical: how the feet and the fascial system controlled movement. The goal of any training program isn't just to build strength, it's to eliminate weakness. Even after years of refining the system, Marv still thought there were new levels to be reached. The Soviets have given him the foundation, but there was still more to unlock. That's where the SuperCat machine came in. The SuperCat was designed to maximize the stretch shortening cycle, forcing athletes to absorb and reapply force at game speed. It was plyometrics taken to another level, training the body to be more elastic, explosive while reducing stress on the joints. Athletes who trained with the SuperCat didn't just get stronger, they moved with a new level of efficiency, speed, and balance. But even with this, something was still missing. Marv realized that the biggest weakness in most athletes wasn't in their muscles, it was in their feet. The feet are the foundation of every movement. If they are weak, the entire body compensates, reducing power, throwing off balance, and increasing the risk of injury. Without strong feet, no athlete can perform at their true potential. That's when Marv was introduced to Dr. Edith and her work on foot strength and ball work training. And this was the missing piece that changed everything. Weakness leads to compensation, which reduces force generation, increases injury risk, and can limit athletic potential. And for years, even with the best training systems, we're missing a critical piece: the feet and how the body absorbs and transfers force. Ball work training isn't just about strength. It's about training the body to absorb and redirect force dynamically. By working with shifting weights and unstable loads, the body learns to stabilize, balance, and move with true elasticity. Instead of just building isolated strength, ball work creates a system where muscles, tendons, and fascia all work together, making movement more reactive, coordinated, and efficient. This is what separates good athletes from great ones. It's not just about how strong you are, it's about how well you move. One of the first elite athletes to fully integrate Marv's complete system was Troy Polamalu. Plyometrics, foot strength, ball work, it all came together in the most explosive, reactive, and durable defensive player in NFL history. Troy's ability to move, cover ground, and absorb impact without injury was like anything the league had seen before. He was playing the game at a different speed, moving with complete control and elasticity. His results were so undeniable that he had it written in his NFL contract he would train exclusively with Marv Marinovich. This was proof that Marv's training wasn't just theory, it was producing game-dominating results. Marv's success with football caught the attention of elite fighters, and no one embraced the system more than BJ Penn. With Marv's training, BJ developed unmatched balance, control, and endurance, leading to some of the best performances of his career and multiple UFC championships. Then came Georges St-Pierre. After tearing his ACL, GSP needed a way to rebuild his movement without breaking down his body. Using ball work and foot strength training, he rebuilt his foundation from the ground up and made a dominant comeback, reclaiming his UFC title. Dominick Cruz, one of the most elusive fighters in MMA history, also used this system to recover from major injuries and maintain his unpredictable movement style. This gave him the ability to re-enter competition without further injury, cementing his legacy. One man who took to Marv's training into the next generation was Nick Curson, one of his top disciples. Curson applied this system to Rafael dos Anjos, a solid but not yet elite lightweight contender. In just a year and a half, Dos Anjos transformed into an unstoppable force, dominating his way to becoming UFC lightweight champion. His endurance, explosiveness, and durability reached a new level, not from lifting heavier weights, but from training his body to move the way it was meant to. This system didn't just work for one athlete, it was repeatable, trainable, and capable of transforming careers. What started with Soviet sports science, refined by Yesis, expanded by Marv Marinovich, and completed with foot strength and ball work training, has reshaped the way we think about training athletics. The secret to explosiveness, longevity, and durability isn't just about lifting heavy weights. It's about how you train the entire body as one connected system. Marv didn't just build athletes, he built a new way to move. If you made it to the end of this video, I'd like to really thank you. This is my first form of long-form content, and it was very difficult to do, trying to recap over 70 years of sports performance science and history. I made this to really highlight the gaps between Western and Eastern sports science, and to show that this industry is constantly innovating and evolving. This training doesn't just work on elite athletes, it works on all levels, from beginner to expert, even to older guys. So if you're a martial artist, you need to make improvements on your longevity, your endurance, your speed, your explosiveness, recover from injuries, whatever it is, book a call below. We'd be happy to talk to you to see what we can do to help. Thanks for watching.